Sign the paper, Miss Carter, or your daddy dies in that hospital bed before sundown." The banker's words hit Evelyn like a bullet. Her hands gripped the contract, 24 years old, and a stranger was telling her the price of her father's life. Then the door slammed open. A tall cowboy in a dust-stained coat walked in, threw a bag of cash on the desk, and said 5 words that froze the entire bank. "She's marrying me. Today." Before we go any further, if you love stories about strong women who refuse to break, please subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and stay with me until the very end. And drop a comment letting me know what city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled. Now let's begin. The bank in Red Hollow had never been so quiet. Evelyn Carter could hear her own heart drumming against her ribs. The pen in her hand felt heavier than a horseshoe. Across the desk, Mr. Pritchard, the bank manager, sat with his fat fingers folded over the foreclosure papers, his eyes shining with the kind of pleasure only cruel men know. 3 days, Miss Carter. That's what your daddy has left on that hospital bill, and that's what your land has left before the bank takes it." "Please," Evelyn whispered. "Just 1 more month. The cattle sale." "There won't be a cattle sale. Half your herd is dead from the drought. The other half ain't worth the rope to tie 'em." She closed her eyes. 24 years old. A father in an oxygen tent. A little brother already packing to quit school for the coal mines. A mother dead 5 winters ago. And now this, a fat man in a tie telling her the family name her grandfather built with his bare hands was about to vanish into a ledger. "Sign the paper, Miss Carter, or your daddy dies in that hospital bed before sundown. The county won't keep him on charity past tonight." That's when the door slammed open. Boots first, heavy, slow. The kind of walk that made everyone in the lobby stop talking. Evelyn turned and her breath caught. He was taller than any man she'd seen in Red Hollow, wearing a coat the color of dust and trouble, a black hat pulled low, a jaw like granite, and eyes gray-cold steady that swept the room once and landed on her like a verdict. Mr. Pritchard's mouth fell open. "Maddox, what in God's name are you doing in my bank?" The cowboy didn't answer the banker. He walked straight to the desk, dropped a leather satchel onto the wood with a thud that rattled the inkwell and untied the strap. Bundled $100 bills tumbled out. More money than Evelyn had seen in her whole life. "That covers the Carter foreclosure, and the hospital bill, and whatever interest you were planning to invent." Pritchard's face went white, then red, then white again. You can't just—" "I just did." The cowboy turned to Evelyn. He didn't smile. He didn't soften. He looked at her like a man sizing up a horse he was thinking of buying, and yet somehow it didn't feel like that. It felt like he was reading her. "You're Evelyn Carter." Yes, sir." "Get your coat. We're going to the courthouse." "What? You heard me?" She stood up too fast and her knees nearly buckled. "Mister, I don't even know your name." "Cole Maddox." The whole room sucked in air at the same time. Maddox! The name people whispered like a curse. The mountain man from Blackstone Ridge. The one folks said had killed 2 cattle thieves with his bare hands. The one mothers used to scare their children at night. And he had just paid off her family's debt with a bag of cash. "Mr. Maddox," Evelyn said, and her voice was steadier than she expected. "I appreciate what you just did, but I don't take charity from strangers." "Good, because it's not charity." "Then what is it?" His gray eyes didn't move off her face. "Marry me. Today. And your family keeps everything, the land, the house, your daddy's medicine, your brother's schooling, all of it, permanent." Behind her, Pritchard let out a wheezing laugh. "Boy, she's a Carter. Old name. Even with no money, she don't marry no mountain trash." "Shut your mouth, Pritchard," Cole said without even looking at him. The banker shut his mouth. Evelyn felt the floor tilt under her boots. You're asking me to marry you. Right now. A man I never met. I'm asking once. I won't ask again. Why? That's my business. The deal is the deal. Yes or no?" She stared at him. She looked for cruelty in his face. She didn't find any. She looked for hunger, the kind men got when they wanted to own a woman. She didn't find that either. What she found behind all that stone was something else. He looked at her like an equal, like a man who had walked into that bank knowing exactly what she was worth, and it wasn't her body, and it wasn't her name. It was something he hadn't told her yet. Her father was dying. Her brother was about to throw away his future. Her family's land, the land her grandfather had bled into, was about to belong to Pritchard's bank. 3 days, that's all she had. Evelyn lifted her chin. I want it in writing, every word of it. The land, my daddy's care, my brother's schooling. In ink. Today. For the first time, the corner of Cole Maddox's mouth moved. Not a smile. Just a flicker. Done. The courthouse clerk married them in 11 minutes. 11 minutes. That's how long it took Evelyn Carter to become Evelyn Maddox. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She signed the line where the clerk pointed, and her hand was steadier than it had been in months. Cole signed his name in tight, small letters, a man who didn't waste ink any more than he wasted words. When the clerk said, "You may kiss the bride," Cole just tipped his hat at the man and walked out. Evelyn followed him into the street, and the whole town of Red Hollow was watching. Mrs. Hennessy from the dry goods store had her hand over her mouth. Old Pastor Briggs was shaking his head slowly. 2 ranch hands at the saloon door were grinning the kind of grin that made Evelyn's stomach turn. And little Sarah Cobb, who had been in Evelyn's Sunday school class, just stared at her like she'd watched a friend climb into a coffin. A voice from the saloon hollered, "How much he pay you, Carter girl?" Cole stopped walking. He turned slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't draw a weapon. He just looked at the man who'd shouted, and that man, a big bull-shouldered drover named Lee Tully, went pale and stepped backward into the saloon door. "Anybody else got something to say about my wife?" Nobody did. Evelyn felt something strange move through her chest. It wasn't love. It wasn't even comfort. It was something she hadn't felt in 5 years since her mother died. It was the feeling of someone standing between her and the world. "Get in the wagon, Mrs. Maddox," Cole said quietly. She climbed up. She didn't look back. The hospital was the first stop. Evelyn ran down the long hallway past the stink of bleach and old sickness and threw open the door to her father's room. Mr. Carter was thinner than she remembered from yesterday, and yesterday he had already been a ghost. His chest rattled with every breath. "Daddy, Daddy, listen to me." His eyes opened halfway. "Evie, the bill is paid, Daddy. All of it. They're moving you to the county hospital tonight. The good one. The one with the lung doctor from Dallas." His cracked lips trembled. How did you—" "Don't worry about how. Just get well. You hear me? You get well." She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back, weak as a kitten, but he squeezed back. When she walked out of the room, her younger brother Tommy was standing in the hall, 15 years old, and trying to look like a man. "Evie, there's a stranger out by the wagon. They're saying you married him." She faced him. "I did, Tommy." "What?" "I married Cole Maddox. The land's safe. Daddy's safe. You're going back to school in the fall." Tommy's face crumpled. "Evie, no. No, you can't." "I already did. He's a killer, Evie. Everybody says a lot of things, Tommy. Everybody also said our daddy was going to die in 3 days. Now he's going to live. So I'll trust the man who saved his life over a town full of people who watched him die." Her brother stared at her for a long moment. Then his lip quivered, and he wrapped his skinny arms around her waist and held on like a drowning boy holds a rope. "I'm sorry, Evie. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just be smart. Finish school. Make this trade worth something." Cole Maddox was waiting by the wagon when she came out. He didn't ask how the visit went. He didn't have to. He could see it on her face. "Anything else in town?" he asked. "My things. At the farm. Just one trunk." "We'll fetch it." The ride out to the Carter place was quiet. The wind carried the smell of dry grass and dust. Evelyn watched the road instead of the man beside her. Twice she opened her mouth to ask the question burning in her chest. Twice she closed it. Finally, on the third try, she got it out. "Why me, Mr. Maddox?" "Cole." "Why me, Cole?" He didn't answer for a long time. "You went into Pritchard's office today, knowing he was going to break you," he said at last. "And you went in anyway. That tells me what kind of woman you are." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting today." She turned her head and looked at him hard. "Are you going to hurt me?" His jaw tightened. The reins flexed in his hands. "No." "Are you going to lie to me?" A pause. "Not about anything that matters." "That's a strange answer." "It's an honest one." The Carter farm looked smaller than she remembered. Maybe because she was already starting to leave it. The porch sagged. The barn door hung crooked. 3 skinny cows stared at her from the dry pasture like they knew their owner had just been replaced. Tommy helped her load the trunk into the wagon. There wasn't much in it. 2 dresses, her mother's Bible, a locket, a wooden box of letters her father had written when he was young, and her mother was the prettiest girl in 3 counties. That was Evelyn Carter's life. 1 trunk. Tommy hugged her again. "You write me, Evie. You write me every week. You promise." "I promise." She climbed back into the wagon. Cole flicked the reins. The horses started forward. She did not look back at the farm. She had promised herself the moment she signed those papers that she would never look back. They rode in silence for an hour. The land changed as they climbed. Dry plains gave way to scrub, gave way to pine. The sun started to drop. "How far is your place?" she asked. 3 more hours." 3? Blackstone Ridge isn't a place a man finds by accident. Is that why folks talk about it like it's the devil's own backyard? Folks talk about a lot of things they've never seen. She nodded slowly. Then she gathered her courage and asked the second question that had been clawing at her chest. "Cole, are we going to be... is this a real marriage?" His hands stayed steady on the reins. "It's whatever you make it, Evelyn. I won't touch you. Not today. Not next month. Not next year. Not unless you ask. That's my word." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Then why marry?" "Because I needed a wife. Not a woman. A wife. Legal. Permanent. Smart enough to be in the room when the wolves come." "What wolves?" He turned his head and looked at her then, really looked at her. And for the first time she saw something behind those gray eyes, something tired, something hunted. "You'll see them soon enough, Mrs. Maddox." The sun was almost down when they reached the first gate. Evelyn had been expecting a homestead, maybe a one-room cabin with a leaning chimney, the kind of place a rough cowboy called home. What she saw was a stone wall, not a fence. A wall. 6 feet high, cut from black mountain stone running off into the trees on both sides, as far as her eye could follow. A heavy iron gate stood in the middle of it, and 2 men with rifles stood at the gate. 2 men, with rifles, at Cole Maddox's house. She sat up straighter. "Cole, who are those men?" "My men." "Why are they armed?" "Because last month somebody tried to set my north pasture on fire." Evelyn's mouth went dry. The taller of the 2 guards stepped forward as the wagon rolled up. His eyes went to Cole, then to Evelyn, then back to Cole. His eyebrows climbed up under his hat brim. "Boss, you brought company." "Wade, this is my wife, Evelyn Maddox. Anybody on this ridge gives her trouble, you bring me his teeth." The guard named Wade pulled his hat off so fast he nearly threw it. "Ma'am, pleased to make your acquaintance, ma'am." "Likewise, Mr. Wade." The gate creaked open. Cole snapped the reins and the wagon rolled through. And as the trees parted around the bend, Evelyn Maddox saw what was waiting on the other side of that wall. Her hand went slowly to her mouth. She did not breathe. She did not blink. Because the man she had just married, the rough cowboy the whole town pitied her for, had not brought her to a cabin. He had brought her home to an empire. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a single thought rose up clear as a bell. The wolves he was talking about. They're going to come for this place. And he married me because he thinks I can help him fight them. Cole pulled the wagon to a stop and finally looked at her. "Welcome to Blackstone Ridge, Mrs. Maddox." She turned to face him. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Cole, who in God's name are you?" He didn't answer. He just stepped down from the wagon, walked around to her side, and held out his hand. "Come inside. There's somebody waiting to meet you. And after you meet him, you're going to understand why I needed a wife who wouldn't break." Evelyn took his hand and stepped down from the wagon, and the moment her boots touched the gravel, her knees nearly gave out. "Cole, I need a minute. Take it." "No, I don't think a minute is going to be enough." He didn't answer. He just stood there, steady as a fence post, while she breathed in through her nose and tried to swallow the size of what she was looking at. "Cole. The man waiting inside. Who is he?" "His name is Samuel Reed. He's been with my family for 41 years. "Family. You have family here." "Had." That single word landed harder than a slap. She turned her head to look at him. Cole. Inside Evelyn. The front door opened before they reached it. An old man in a gray vest stood in the doorway. Tall, once stooped now, with white hair combed flat, and eyes that had seen too much. He looked at Cole first, then at Evelyn. Then his hand went up to his mouth and stayed there. "Lord in heaven. Boy. You actually did it." "Samuel, this is my wife." The old man's eyes filled, and he didn't try to hide it. "Mrs. Maddox, forgive an old man. It's just been a long time since this house had a woman in it." "Mr. Reed, I pleased to meet you, sir." "Samuel, just Samuel, ma'am. Please, come in. Come in out of the cold." She stepped through the door and stopped breathing, stopped thinking. "Cole?" "Yes." "Cole, what is this place?" "Home." "This is not a home. A home is what I left in Red Hollow. This is... Dinner's ready in 20 minutes, Samuel said gently. "I'll have your trunk brought up to the East Room, ma'am. The East Room gets the morning sun. I thought you might like that." Evelyn turned to the old man like a drowning woman turns to a rope. "Samuel, how long has Cole lived here?" "All his life, ma'am." "All his... His daddy built the original house. His granddaddy bought the land. Mr. Cole's the third Maddox to walk these floors." She turned back to her husband. Her voice came out low and shaking. "You let the whole town of Red Hollow believe you were dirt poor. I let them believe what they wanted to believe. Why? Because the men who want this land are watching, and a poor cowboy isn't worth watching as close as a rich one." Samuel served them dinner in a dining room the size of a church. Evelyn sat at a table that could seat 20 8-off china that her mother would have cried just to touch, and could not taste a single bite of the food in her mouth. "Cole." "Eat, Evelyn." "I can't eat. I have questions." "Then ask." "How much land?" 42,000 acres. The fork slipped out of her hand and rang against the plate. 42,000, yes. Cattle. 8,000 head, give or take. The numbers shift. Horses. 200 and change. The bloodlines come out of Kentucky. Workers. 63 full-time, another 40 seasonal. She put both her hands flat on the table to stop them shaking. "Cole Maddox, you are a rich man." "I am." "You are a very rich man." "I am." "And you walked into Pritchard's bank wearing a coat that smelled like a campfire and bought me with a bag of cash." "I bought time, not you." "Time for what?" He set his fork down. Time to keep this place out of the hands of men who would scrape it down to bedrock and sell what was left to the highest bidder. She stared at him. Cole, who is coming for this land? Eat your dinner, Evelyn. We'll talk in the study. I'd rather talk now. And I'd rather you eat first. You haven't had a real meal in a week. I can see it in your wrists. She looked down at her own hands. He was right. Her wrists looked like a child's. She ate. The study was lined with books, real ones. The kind a man reads, not the kind a man buys to look educated. Cole pulled a leather folder from the desk and laid it down in front of her. Open it. She opened it. The first page was a letter on heavy cream paper. The letterhead read, Halford Petroleum Group, Houston, Texas. Mr. Maddox, this is our final offer. $46 million for the surface and mineral rights to the Blackstone Ridge property. You have until the end of the calendar year to respond. After that date, we will be forced to pursue alternative legal avenues to secure the parcel. Evelyn looked up. $46 million. That was 3 months ago. The offer's gone up since. And you said no. I said no. Why? Because there's no oil under this land that's worth a thing to anybody but them. And if I sell 12,000 cattle, die 63 men lose their jobs. 2 creeks get poisoned within a year. And 4 ranching families downstream lose their water rights before spring. You know all that for a fact. I've watched it happen on 3 other ranches in this state. I won't watch it happen on the 4th. She turned the page. The next letter was from a senator in Austin. The 3rd was from a federal land agency. The 4th was a notice of zoning review. The 5th was a lawsuit. By the 8th page, she stopped reading and just looked at the stack. Cole, they are coming at you from every side. Every side every week. And you're alone. I have Samuel. I have my men. That is not what I mean, and you know it. He didn't answer. She closed the folder. Tell me the rest, Cole. The part you haven't told me yet. Why you needed a wife and not a lawyer. His jaw moved. My father signed 3 contracts before he died. Land contracts. With a man who's now sitting on the State Land Commission. What kind of contracts? The kind that say if a Maddox dies without a legal heir or a legal spouse, the land defaults to the partner of record. The room went so quiet she could hear the clock. Cole. My father's been dead 2 years. Cole. And I'm the last Maddox. She put a hand to her mouth. You needed a wife by law. I needed a wife by law. Or you would lose everything. Or I would lose everything. And the deadline was day after tomorrow. Evelyn sat very still for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to the window and stood there with her back to him. Cole Maddox. Yes. You used me. I made you an offer. You took it. You let me believe you. Let me believe you were saving my family out of some kind of... I was saving your family. That part wasn't a lie. And you were saving yourself. Yes. At the same time. At the same time. Why didn't you tell me in the bank? Because if I had told you in the bank, you would have asked for half, and you would have been right to. She turned around slowly. And now? Now you're my wife. You can ask for anything you want. Don't. I mean it. Don't insult me, Cole. I didn't marry you for a piece of your land. I married you for my daddy's life and my brother's school and a bag of cash that paid Pritchard's debt. That was the deal. That is still the deal. He didn't speak. But you should know something about me, Cole Maddox. Tell me. I don't like being lied to. I don't like being managed, and if you ever again put me in a room with a contract in my lap and don't tell me what's actually written on the paper, I'll tell you, from now on, everything. Swear it. On my mother's grave. She studied his face. Then we have a marriage. She didn't sleep that first night. She walked the halls of that house barefoot, holding a candle, looking at portraits of dead Maddoxes, and trying to understand what kind of man would carry 42,000 acres on his back alone. Around 3 a.m, she found Samuel in the kitchen pouring himself coffee. Mrs. Maddox. Couldn't sleep. No, Samuel, I couldn't. Sit, I'll pour you a cup. She sat. Samuel, may I ask you something honest? You may ask. I may not answer. Cole's father. How did he die? The old man's hand stopped above the coffee pot. Ma'am, that's a question for your husband. My husband won't answer it. I can already tell. Samuel set the pot down. Mr. Edward Maddox died on the South Road, ma'am. His horse was found a mile from the body. The sheriff called it a fall. And what do you call it? The old man's eyes met hers. I call it the day Halford Petroleum got their first contract signed. Evelyn's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Samuel, are you telling me his father was murdered? I'm telling you a man as fine on a horse as Edward Maddox doesn't fall off one. Not on a road he rode every day for 30 years. Does Cole know? Cole's the one who found him. She set the cup down. Her hand was trembling. Samuel, how long has my husband been carrying this? 2 years and 4 months, ma'am, by himself, with no one to talk to but an old man pouring coffee in the dark. She climbed the stairs slowly. She walked down the hall. She stopped at the door of the room Samuel had pointed out as Cole's, and she stood there with her hand on the wood. She didn't knock. She just leaned her forehead against the door and whispered so quietly the wood barely heard her. You poor man, you poor lonely man. And then she went to her own room and lay down and stared at the dark, and somewhere in that dark, a thing inside her chest shifted. She had married Cole Maddox to save her family. She was going to fight for him to save his. In the morning, she came down the stairs in her best dress and walked into the dining room and found him already at the table with a stack of ledgers. Cole. Mrs. Maddox. I need to see the books. He looked up. Which books? All of them. Evelyn. You said everything. From now on. You swore it on your mother's grave. He held her eyes for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked to the wall, opened a cabinet, and pulled down 6 leather ledgers and set them in front of her. Cattle, horses, payroll, tax, mineral surveys, litigation, and the contracts your father signed. In the safe. Bring them. He went to bring them, Mum. She read for 9 hours straight. Samuel brought her sandwiches. She didn't eat them. She read, and she made notes, and she filled 3 pages of a yellow tablet with numbers, and crossed them out and filled 3 more. Around 4 in the afternoon, she stopped writing and looked up. Cole. Yes. Sit down. He sat. Your payroll for July is $2,000 short of what it should be. What? And your hay receipts for May are off by a third. That's not possible. Bill Hennessy runs the books. Bill Hennessy is stealing from you. Or somebody is stealing through Bill Hennessy. I can't tell which yet. The room went still. Evelyn? And whoever it is has been doing it for at least 16 months, which means they were doing it before your father died. His hand went flat on the table. You're certain? I balanced my daddy's books from the time I was 12. I'm certain. He leaned back in his chair and let out a breath that sounded like it had been locked in his chest for 2 years. My God, there it is. There what is? The leak. I knew there was a leak. I knew somebody inside this ranch was telling Halford every move I made. I just couldn't find the man. Cole. Yes. You didn't marry me to be a hostess. No. You didn't marry me just to satisfy a contract clause. No. You married me because you'd seen me work my daddy's farm for 5 years on nothing but spit and arithmetic, and you needed somebody who could read a ledger and not be afraid of what was on the page. His gray eyes did something then. Something she hadn't seen them do. They softened. Evelyn Carter. I married you because you were the only person in 3 counties who had stared down Pritchard alone and walked back out with her chin up. And I'd been watching for somebody like that for a long time. How long is a long time? 6 months. You watched me for 6 months. I watched a lot of women for 6 months. You were the only one I came down the mountain for. Before she could answer that, Samuel knocked on the doorframe. "Mr. Cole, there's a rider at the gate." "Who?" "Says his name is Hale, sir." Cole's whole body went still. "Victor Hale." "Yes, sir." "What does he want?" "He says he came to congratulate the new bride." Evelyn watched her husband's face go from a man to a stone. "Tell him I'm not home." "He already knows you're home, sir. He says he can wait." "Then tell him to wait till winter." "Cole." She had said his name quietly, but he heard her. "What?" "Send him in." "Evelyn, you said this was a marriage. That means I'm in the room. Send him in." "You don't know who that man is." "Then introduce me." Cole stared at her. For one long, hard heartbeat, she thought he was going to say no. Then something at the corner of his mouth flickered that almost smile again, and he nodded once at Samuel. "Show Mr. Hale to the front parlor. Tell him Mrs. Maddox will receive him in 10 minutes. Samuel's eyebrows went up. He left. Cole turned to her. "Evelyn, listen to me. This man killed my father. I can't prove it, but I know it the way I know my own name." Then today, he meets the woman who's going to help you prove it. "Evelyn, what do I need to know before I walk into that parlor? He's 58. He owns a ranch on the east side of the ridge half the size of mine. He runs cattle on the surface, and he leases the mineral rights to Halford in secret. He sits on the State Cattlemen's Association. He calls himself my father's oldest friend. He spoke at the funeral. And the contracts, the ones your father signed. His name is the partner of record on all three." She closed the ledger in front of her. "So if you had died without a wife by yesterday, Victor Hale would own Blackstone Ridge by sundown today." "Cole?" "Yes." "How close did he come?" "I don't know. I've been looking over my shoulder for 2 years." She stood up. She smoothed her dress. She walked to the mirror over the sideboard and pinned a stray piece of hair back into place. "Then let's let him see what he missed." She walked into the parlor on Cole's arm 5 minutes later, and the man waiting on the green sofa stood up. He was tall, silver hair, soft hands, a smile that had been practiced in front of mirrors for 40 years. "Cole, my boy, I came as soon as I heard." "Victor." "And this must be the lucky young lady." "Mrs. Maddox," Evelyn said pleasantly and held out her hand. "It's a pleasure to put a face to the name Mr. Hale. My husband speaks of you often." The smile on Victor Hale's face flickered for a half-second. "Does he?" "All the time. He says you were practically a brother to his father." "Edward and I, yes. Yes, we were close." "He says you spoke beautifully at the funeral." "I did my best." "He says it must have been a comfort to know there was someone who understood the value of this land as much as Edward did." The flicker came back, a little longer this time. "Mrs. Maddox, you sound like a woman who's read her husband's correspondence." "Oh, every page of it, Mr. Hale. I'm an old-fashioned wife that way. My husband and I don't have secrets." Cole beside her did not move a muscle, but she could feel him listening to every word. "Well." Victor Hale recovered himself and showed his teeth. "Then I'm sure my dear young friends are very much looking forward to the Cattlemen's Gala next month. I'd love to introduce Mrs. Maddox to the membership." "We accept," Evelyn said before Cole could open his mouth. "Splendid. And forgive an old man's curiosity, how did the two of you meet? The wedding was so sudden." "Oh, Mr. Hale." She smiled. "It was the most romantic thing. He rode into a bank one afternoon, paid off my family's debts in front of God and everybody, and asked me to marry him before sundown. A girl knows when she's been chosen." How touching, wasn't it? She tilted her head. "Was there a particular reason for your visit today, Mr. Hale?" "I came to offer my congratulations, and well to remind Cole that the second extension on his father's partnership contracts comes due at the end of next quarter." "Oh, the partnership contracts." Evelyn nodded brightly. "Yes, we'll be having those reviewed by counsel in the morning." The smile fell off Victor Hale's face entirely. "Counsel. Out of Austin. A firm my husband's family has used for 40 years. I'm sure you've heard of them. Carmichael and Bell." He had. She could see he had. "Mrs. Maddox?" "Yes, Mr. Hale. You're a very surprising young woman." "Why, thank you, Mr. Hale. Coming from a man like you, that's nearly a compliment." He stared at her. For 3 long heartbeats, the room was as quiet as a graveyard at midnight. Then Victor Hale picked up his hat and bowed to her very slowly, very carefully. "I look forward to seeing you at the gala, Mrs. Maddox." "And I you, Mr. Hale." He left. The front door closed. The wagon outside rolled away. Cole turned to her, and for the first time since she had met him, his voice came out unsteady. "Evelyn?" "Yes." "What, in the name of God, was that?" That Cole was a man finding out his easy mark just got married to a woman who can read. "Evelyn, and we have until the end of next quarter to bury him. You don't understand what you just did. He's going to come for you now. He was already coming for you. Now he just has to do it twice." Cole stared at her. Then he did something she had not seen him do. He laughed. It was a short laugh, and a tired laugh, and a laugh that sounded like it hurt his ribs because it had been so long since he'd used it. But it was a laugh. "Mrs. Maddox?" "Yes, Mr. Maddox." "I think I married the wrong kind of woman." "What kind did you mean to marry?" "A quiet one." "Then yes, sir, you did." That night, Samuel knocked on her bedroom door and held out an envelope. "This came by rider an hour ago, Mrs. Maddox. From Red Hollow. From your brother." She tore it open. 3 lines in Tommy's careful looping script. "Evie. Daddy is sitting up. Daddy is talking. Daddy is asking for you. The doctor from Dallas says he's going to live. Tommy." She sat down on the bed and pressed the letter to her chest and cried for the first time in 3 days. Then she dried her eyes. Then she stood up. Then she walked across the hall and knocked on Cole Maddox's door. He opened it. He was still dressed. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. My father is going to live." "Good. That's good news." "Cole." "Yes. I want you to know something." "All right." "When I signed those papers in the courthouse yesterday, I signed them to save my family." "I know. I didn't know I was signing them to save yours too." He didn't speak. "But I am going to Cole. I am going to save your family, the one you have left, and the one that's coming, whatever it takes, whatever it costs. Because you bought my father back from the grave with a bag of cash, and a debt like that does not go on a ledger." She held his eyes for one long moment. Then she went back to her room and closed the door. And inside that room, Cole Maddox stood very still for a very long time, with his hand on the doorframe, listening to a sound in his own chest he had not heard in 2 years and 4 months. It was hope. By morning, Evelyn was already at the long table in the study, 3 ledgers open, and her yellow tablet half filled when Cole walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You didn't sleep." "I slept enough." "How much?" 2 hours, maybe." "Evelyn." "Cole, sit down. I found something." He sat. He pushed the coffee in front of her. She didn't touch it. "Bill Hennessy isn't the leak." "You said yesterday." "I said somebody was stealing through Bill Hennessy. That's different. Bill is sloppy, but he's not smart enough to hide what's missing from your hay receipts. Somebody else is using his books as cover." "Who?" "Look at this column." She turned the ledger. Every payment that's gone missing was approved by a second signature. "Whose?" "I don't know yet. The handwriting changes. Sometimes it's a J. Sometimes it's an initial. Sometimes it's just a check mark." "That's not enough to—" "Cole, the J's are written by a left-handed man." He went still. "Wade Tomlin is left-handed. Wade, your gate man. Wade, my foreman, the man who's worked this ranch since he was 16 years old." "How old is he now?" 41. "Then he's been on this place 25 years. And somewhere in those 25 years, somebody got to him." Cole put his face in his hands for a moment. "Cole? My father trusted that man with his life." "I know." "Evelyn, if it's Wade—" Then we don't say a word to anybody until we know for sure. Not Samuel, not the men, not even the dog. She closed the ledgers and locked them in the desk and put the key in the pocket of her dress, and when she walked out of the study, she walked straight into Wade Tomlin, standing in the front hall with his hat in his hand. "Mrs. Maddox?" "Wade. Boss said you wanted to see the north pasture this morning." "Did he?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then I'd be obliged for the company." She didn't blink. She didn't pause. She smiled like a bride and walked out the door beside the man she had just identified as a thief. In the wagon 2 miles from the house, she did the thing that made Cole Maddox love her later, though he didn't know it yet. "Wade, tell me about Edward Maddox." The reins shifted in his hands. "Mr. Edward, ma'am." "Cole's father. I've been trying to learn about him. Cole doesn't talk much." "He don't, ma'am. No, he don't." "Were you with him long?" 25 years, ma'am." "Did you like him?" A pause. "He was a hard man, ma'am." "Hard how?" "Hard about money, hard about land, hard about who he let close." "And you? Were you close?" "As close as a man like me gets to a man like him, ma'am." She let that sit a moment. "Wade, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." "Yes, ma'am." "Did Edward Maddox have any debts to Victor Hale?" The reins jerked. The wagon lurched. Wade caught it. He cleared his throat twice before he answered. "That'd be a question for your husband, ma'am." "My husband doesn't know everything, Wade. That's why I'm asking the man who does." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She had already seen what she needed. That night, she told Cole, and Cole sat on the edge of the desk for a long time and didn't speak. "Cole. He cried at my father's funeral, Evelyn. Stood next to me at the grave. Held my arm." "I know." "He taught me how to throw a rope when I was 8. "I know." "What do we do?" "We don't fire him. We don't. If we fire him, Victor Hale knows we know. We feed him bad information. We let him carry it back. We use him." "Evelyn." "What?" "You scare me a little." "Good." The first attack came 4 nights later. Samuel woke them both at 2 in the morning, pounding on Cole's door, his old voice shaking. "Cole! Cole, the south barn is on fire!" Cole was out the door, pulling on his boots, before Samuel finished the sentence. Evelyn followed in her nightdress and a coat, and by the time they reached the south yard, the men were already running with buckets and the sky was orange. "How many head in there?" Cole shouted. 42 breeders, boss," somebody called back. "We got 38 out. 4 still inside." "Get them out." "Boss the roof." "Get them out." 2 of the men ran into the smoke. 1 came back leading a cow. The other came back limping his hair, singed no cow. "It's gone, boss. The whole back stall. Gone." Cole turned to look at Evelyn. She was already looking at the ground at the edge of the barn. "Cole?" "What?" "Come here." He came. She pointed. A kerosene can. Empty. Tipped on its side. "This wasn't an accident." "I see that." "Cole. There are footprints leading away from the can." "Whose?" She crouched down and studied them. "A boot with a worn left heel. Same boot makes the same print every time." "Evelyn, there are 60 men on this ranch." "I know, but there's only one of them, whose left heel I've been watching for 4 days." Cole's hand went to his hip. There was no gun there. He'd come running in his nightshirt. "Wade. Let him think we don't know. Let him think the fire worked. Evelyn, he just burned my barn. He just nearly killed 2 of my men. And if you put a bullet in him tonight, you go to jail and Victor Hale walks into Blackstone Ridge tomorrow morning. Cole, look at me. Look at me. We are not done yet." He looked at her. The fire was still burning behind him. His jaw was working. "All right. All right. But if he comes near you, Evelyn, he won't. If he comes near you, Cole, he won't." The next morning the news came in waves. The first wave was from the lower pasture. 11 head of cattle dead in the night. No marks on them, no sign of struggle. Poison, Cole said, and the word came out like a curse. The second wave came at noon. A rider from town with a packet of papers. Mr. Maddox, Sheriff Brunson asked me to deliver these personally. Cole opened the packet. Then he sat down on the porch step with the papers in his hand and didn't move for a full minute. Cole, what is it? They're charging me with arson. What? My own barn. They're saying I burned it for the insurance. Who's saying? A witness. Anonymous. The packet says a ranch hand testified before the magistrate at 6 this morning. Wade. Cole, I have to be in Red Hollow by Friday or there's a warrant. This is Friday. I know. The third wave came at 3 in the afternoon, and it was the one that broke her. Samuel walked into the study with an envelope in his hand and his face the color of paper. Mrs. Maddox, this came by rider from your brother. She tore it open. Evie. 2 men came to the farm last night, asked Daddy questions about you and where you was. Daddy didn't tell them nothing, but he was scared. He won't say it, but he was scared. Come if you can. Tommy. The letter trembled in her hand. Cole was watching her face. What did it say? They went after my family, Cole. What? 2 men, at my father's farm, last night. He stood up so fast the chair tipped backward. That's where this stops. Cole. That's where this stops, Evelyn. I'm done playing chess with this man. I'm going to ride to his ranch and I'm going to... You are going to do nothing of the kind. Evelyn. You go on to Victor Hale's land and put hands on him and you hand him this ranch on a silver platter. You walk into a fistfight and the warrant for your arrest becomes a warrant for assault, and the partnership clause activates and Blackstone Ridge belongs to him by Monday morning. Then what? Then we do it the harder way. Which is? We bury him in his own paperwork, in public, with witnesses, where he can't shoot his way out. Dud. She didn't sleep that night either. She read until her eyes burned. She read every contract Edward Maddox had signed in the last 10 years of his life. She cross-referenced every payment in the leaked ledgers with the dates on the contracts. She found 3, then 5, then 7. By dawn, she had it. Cole. He came down the stairs already dressed. What? Your father's contracts with Hale aren't legal. What do you mean not legal? They were signed under a Texas land statute that requires a sealed witness from the State Office of Mineral Records. There's no seal on any of these. Evelyn. It means every one of them is voidable, Cole. It means Victor Hale doesn't actually have a legal partnership with this ranch. It means he's been living off a lie for 10 years. Then why didn't a lawyer catch this? Because the lawyer who reviewed them was Hale's own cousin, and the secretary at the records office, who was supposed to seal them, works for Halford Petroleum. Halford Petroleum. He sat down on the bottom stair. My God. The whole thing. Top to bottom. It's a fraud. It's worse than a fraud, Cole. It's organized. There are at least 4 state officials whose names appear on these documents who shouldn't be anywhere near them, including a man on the State Land Commission, the same commission that's hearing the Halford zoning case in 9 days. The same commission, Cole. He looked up at her slowly. Evelyn, if you walk into that hearing and put these papers on the table, every one of those men loses everything. I know. And every one of those men knows people who hurt people for less. I know. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Evelyn. Cole, they went to my father's farm. They scared a man who can barely breathe. They scared a 15-year-old boy who watched our mother die. I am going to do this. I am going to walk into that hearing, and I am going to take every one of them apart. And then I am going to come home. He stood up and he crossed the room in 3 long steps, and he stopped in front of her, and for the first time since she had met him, he didn't know what to do with his hands. Evelyn. What, Cole? I have to tell you something. Then tell me. I married you to save my ranch. I know. But somewhere along the way. Don't, Cole. Somewhere along the way, you became my home." She closed her eyes. "Cole Maddox, you can't say things like that to me right now." "Why?" "Because in 9 days I have to walk into a room full of men who would rather see me dead than embarrassed, and I cannot afford to be in love with you when I do it." He took her hand, just her hand, not her arm, not her face. "Then come home to me when it's done." "I'll come home. Promise me." "I'll come home, Cole." There were 8 days between that morning and the hearing in Austin. In those 8 days, 3 more things happened. The first was that Cole rode into Red Hollow, alone, walked into the sheriff's office, and turned himself in on the arson charge to keep the warrant from being used against him on the road. He posted bond. He came back the same day. Evelyn met him at the gate. "Cole, it's done. I'm out till the trial." And the trial is 3 weeks. After the hearing. After the hearing. Then we have time. The second thing was that Wade Tomlin disappeared. Just gone. His bunk empty. His horse gone. His saddle gone. Samuel found Cole in the barn that night. "He cleared out, sir. Took his pay envelope and his good boots." "He knows we know." "He knows we know, sir." "Then Hale knows we know." "Yes, sir." Cole stood in that barn for a long time. Then he turned to Samuel. "Tell the men. Double watch on every fence line. Nobody rides alone. And if anybody sees Wade Tomlin in 100 miles, they bring him to me alive." "Yes, sir." "And Samuel." "Sir?" "Triple the watch on the house." "Already done, sir." The third thing was that Victor Hale paid Evelyn a visit. He did not come up to the house. He did not knock at the door. She found him standing at the fence line of the upper meadow when she rode out one morning to clear her head, and he was leaning on the rail like he owned it. "Mrs. Maddox." "Mr. Hale. Beautiful country up here." "It is. Going to be a shame when Halford starts drilling it." "They won't." "Won't they?" "No, sir, they won't." He smiled. "Mrs. Maddox, you're a charming young woman. You really are. And I've watched a lot of charming young women try to play in rooms they didn't belong in, and you know what happened to every single one of them." "What happened, Mr. Hale?" "They went home." "And what if I am home, Mr. Hale?" His smile got smaller. "Mrs. Maddox, I'd like to give you a piece of advice. From an old friend of the family." "I'm listening." "There's a road between this ranch and Austin. It's a long road. Things happen on long roads." She looked at him. She did not flinch. She did not blink. "Mr. Hale." "Yes, ma'am." "My father-in-law died on a road. I know. So when you say things like that to me, you're not warning me. You're confessing to me. And every word you just said is going into a notebook tonight, and that notebook is going to a federal investigator on Monday morning. Now please get off my fence." His face changed. It was the first time she had seen the soft hands and the silver hair and the practiced smile fall completely off the man. And what was underneath was not a rancher. It was a snake. "You stupid little girl." "Get off my fence, Mr. Hale." "You stupid, stupid little girl. You don't know what you've started. Get off my fence." He got off the fence. He mounted his horse. But before he rode off, he turned in the saddle and looked at her one last time. "Mrs. Maddox, tell that boy I taught to throw a rope that I was sorry about his father. I really was. I didn't want it to happen. But I want you to know something. I'm not going to be sorry about you." He rode away. Evelyn sat on her horse for 10 minutes before she trusted her hands to hold the reins. Then she rode back to the house and she walked into the study and she said 3 words to Cole. "He just confessed." "What?" "Victor Hale just stood at our fence and he confessed to your father. To my face. He said he didn't want it to happen." Cole's face did something terrible then. It went through grief, and it went through rage, and then it went through something colder than either of those, and it stopped there. "Evelyn." "What?" "He came onto this ranch." "He did." "With my wife alone in a meadow." "Yes." "And he threatened her." "Yes." "All right." "All right what?" "All right. We don't wait 9 days. We move tonight. Cole? No, listen to me. We've been playing his game, walking into a state hearing on his ground in his town with his men in the gallery. That's not where you fight a snake, Evelyn. You fight a snake in his own hole. What are you saying? I'm saying we don't go to Austin. We bring Austin here. Cole, what are you talking about? I'm talking about a federal land marshal I have known since I was a boy. I'm talking about a journalist out of Dallas who's been writing about Halford Petroleum for 2 years and can't get a source. I'm talking about a state senator from El Paso who hates the land commission so bad he'd ride a mule through fire to bring it down. I'm talking about putting all 3 of them in this house in 72 hours, with your evidence on the table, with Victor Hale in the parlor, and letting him walk in not knowing they're here. She stared at him. You're going to set him up. I'm going to set him up. In our own house. In our own house. Cole, if this goes wrong, it won't go wrong, because you're the one running the room. I am. Yes, ma'am, you are. She stood up. She walked to the window. She stood there with her back to him for a long moment. Then she turned around. All right, Cole, we do it your way, but we do it my pacing. We do it my words. We do it with my evidence. And when Victor Hale walks into this house, he walks in thinking he's coming to celebrate. Celebrate what? My surrender. Evelyn. Send him a letter, Cole. Tonight. In your hand. Tell him I have begged you to settle. Tell him I'm afraid. Tell him I've convinced you to take the Halford offer and walk away. He won't believe it. He'll want to believe it. That's enough. The letter went out at sundown. The federal marshal came in a stagecoach 2 days later. The journalist came on a train. The senator came in a covered wagon under a false name. By the time Victor Hale's reply rode up the mountain, I'd be honored to attend Mrs. Maddox. I knew you'd come to your senses. There were 3 men hidden in the back rooms of Blackstone Ridge, whose names by themselves could end 3 careers and 1 fortune. The night before he came, Evelyn could not eat. Cole found her in the kitchen at midnight, standing at the counter with her hands flat on the wood. Evelyn, I'm scared, Cole. I know. I have never done anything like this in my life. I know. What if I forget the numbers? You won't. What if my voice shakes? Then it shakes. You speak anyway. What if he... Evelyn, look at me. She looked at him. You walked into a bank with your father dying and 3 days on the clock, and you stood up to a man who was breaking your family on purpose. I watched you do it. That is the woman who is going to walk into that parlor tomorrow, not the woman who's afraid, the woman who already won once. She held his eyes. Cole. Yes. If I don't come out of that room, you will. If I don't, Evelyn. Cole, listen. If I don't, you take care of my daddy, and you take care of Tommy, and you tell my brother that his sister was not afraid. I'll tell him. Promise me. I promise. Victor Hale arrived at noon the next day, in a black coat and a gold pocket watch, smiling like a man come to collect on a bet he had already won. Samuel showed him to the parlor. Evelyn was waiting for him. She stood up when he came in. She extended her hand. She smiled. Mr. Hale, thank you for coming. Mrs. Maddox, I have to say I'm relieved. Relieved? That you've come around. A girl your age married into this kind of trouble, well. I'm just glad your husband listened to reason. Where is Cole, by the way? He'll join us shortly. He's settling some last matters. Of course. Please, sit. Coffee. Please. She poured him a cup. She handed it to him. She sat across from him with her hands folded in her lap. Mr. Hale, before we discuss the settlement, I'd like to ask you a few questions about my father-in-law's contracts. For my own records. Of course, my dear. Whatever you need. You signed 3 partnership contracts with Edward Maddox in the spring of 15 years ago. That's correct. Witnessed by your cousin, Mr. Edgar Hale of Hale and Sons Law in Houston. That's correct. sealed by a clerk named Marvin Cobb at the State Office of Mineral Records. That sounds right. And reviewed 3 years later by an officer of Halford Petroleum named Robert Lansing. A pause. Mrs. Maddox, I don't recall. Oh, I have his signature, Mr. Hale, right here. Would you like to see it? She slid a paper across the coffee table. His eyes went down. His face went still. Mrs. Maddox, what is this? That, Mr. Hale, is a notarized statement from Robert Lansing, taken 3 weeks ago by a federal land marshal in Dallas, in which he describes the exact arrangement under which Halford Petroleum paid you $400,000 to acquire a partnership interest in a ranch you did not own. I have 11 more documents like it in the folder beside me. And before you stand up, Mr. Hale, please don't stand up. There is a federal marshal in the next room. There is a journalist behind the curtain in the dining room. And there is a state senator from El Paso, sitting at my husband's desk in the study, and he is the chairman of the Legislative Oversight Committee that supervises the State Land Commission. She set her coffee cup down. She looked Victor Hale dead in the face. Mr. Hale, you came here today to take a ranch. Mrs. Maddox, you are going to leave this house in handcuffs. The cup slipped out of his hand. It hit the rug. It did not break. It just rolled slowly away from his boot. And from the hallway behind him, the federal marshal stepped into the doorway with a folded warrant in one hand and an iron in the other. Mr. Victor Hale, by authority of the United States District Court of Northern Texas, you are under arrest. Victor Hale did not go quietly. He came up out of his chair with both fists clenched and his face the color of beets, and the federal marshal had to put a hand flat on his chest to keep him in the parlor. This is a frame. This is a frame. Cole Maddox put you up to this. Where is he? Cole, where are you? You coward, come out and face me. The study door opened. Cole walked in. He didn't say a word. He walked across the parlor, stopped 2 feet in front of Victor Hale, and looked at him. Just looked at him. The way a man looks at a wolf that has finally walked into a trap. You killed my father, Victor. Cole, son, I would never... You sat at his funeral. You held my arm. You ate my mother's cornbread the night before we put him in the ground. Cole, please. And you stood at my fence yesterday and you threatened my wife. I never threatened. And you said you weren't going to be sorry about her. Victor Hale's mouth opened, then it closed. Cole leaned in. You should have been sorry about her, Victor, because she's the one who just put you in handcuffs. The marshal pulled Hale's wrists behind his back. The cuffs clicked. Evelyn watched the whole thing with her hands folded on her knees and her face perfectly still. And only she knew that under the table, her right hand was gripping the wooden leg of the chair so hard her knuckles had gone white. They walked Victor Hale out the front door of Blackstone Ridge at 4 o'clock that afternoon, and by 6 o'clock the news had reached Austin, and by 8 o'clock the Dallas Journalist's first telegram had reached his editor, and by midnight the wires were running in 3 states. Samuel found Evelyn on the porch a little after 11, sitting on the steps with a shawl around her shoulders and her eyes on the dark. Mrs. Maddox? Samuel. You haven't come inside. I will. Cole's looking for you. I know. Are you all right, ma'am? I don't know yet. The old man sat down beside her. Ma'am? Can an old man say something? You can always say something, Samuel. What you did today. In that parlor, with that man. Yes. Edward Maddox would have stood up out of his grave to shake your hand. She didn't answer for a long moment. Then she leaned her head against the old man's shoulder just for a second, like a daughter would. Samuel. Yes, ma'am. I'm tired. I know you are, ma'am. I'm so tired. Then come inside. Your husband's pouring you the first whiskey of your life, and he doesn't know how much to put in the glass. She laughed a real laugh surprised out of her, and stood up and went inside. It should have been over. It wasn't. 3 nights later, the second wave came. Cole was in the study going through the marshal's preliminary papers when the front bell rang at midnight, and Samuel came in with his face pale. Mr. Cole, there's a man at the gate. Tell him to come back in the morning. Sir. It's Wade. Cole stood up. Wade Tomlin? Yes, sir. At the gate. Yes, sir. He says he wants to talk to you. He says he's unarmed. Tell the men to keep their rifles on him. Tell them if he so much as scratches his nose, they put a hole in his hand. Yes, sir. Cole walked into the front hall, and Evelyn was already coming down the stairs in her dressing gown, her hair down her back. Cole, what's happening? Wade's come back. To the house. To the gate. Cole, don't go out there alone. I'm not going to. You're coming with me. Cole. Evelyn. He came to talk. Whatever he came to say, you're hearing it too. Wade Tomlin sat on his horse with his hands raised and 4 rifles trained on him, and he looked 20 years older than he had a week ago. Boss? Wade. I figured you'd shoot me on sight. I considered it. I won't blame you if you do it now. Get down off the horse. Wade got down. Walk to the post and put your hands on it. He walked. He put his hands on the post. Now talk. Boss, I'm sorry. That's not enough, Wade. I know. You set my barn on fire, Wade. You testified against me. You let 2 of my men nearly die in the smoke. I know what I did, boss. Then say what you came to say, and say it fast, because the only reason you're still alive is the woman standing next to me. Wade Tomlin lifted his head and looked at Evelyn. Mrs. Maddox. Mr. Tomlin. He's got my boy. The night went still. What? Hale's got my boy, my Daniel. 16 years old. He's been holding him in a cabin up by the Brazos for 14 months. Said he'd kill him if I didn't do what he was told. Said he'd kill him slow. Cole's hand had gone to his hip again. Wade. I never wanted to do any of it, boss. I never wanted to lay a hand on this place. Your daddy raised me. He raised me. But Daniel, he's all I got left, boss. He's all I... The man broke. Right there at the fence post. A grown man crying with both hands flat on the wood. Evelyn stepped forward before Cole could stop her. Mr. Tomlin? Ma'am? Where is your boy now? They moved him 3 days ago. When Hale got nervous, I don't know where to. I've been riding for 2 days trying to find him. That's why I came. That's why I... Cole. Evelyn. We have to find that boy. Evelyn, this man burned. I know what he did, Cole, and we will deal with what he did. But there is a 16-year-old boy somewhere on the other end of all of this, and his father has been a hostage in a different shape for 14 months. Do you hear me? Do you hear me, Cole? Cole closed his eyes. When he opened them, the cold thing in his face had cracked just a little at the edges. All right. All right. Wade. Yes, sir. You ride with my men in the morning. You tell them every place Hale ever sent you in the last 14 months. Every cabin. Every line shack. Every empty pasture. We find your boy. Boss. Don't thank me yet, Wade. When we find your boy, you and I are going to have a long conversation about my barn. Yes, sir. But we find your boy first. They rode out at dawn. Cole 6 of his men. Wade Tomlin in front, with his hands tied loose to the saddle horn, and a federal deputy the marshal had left behind for exactly this kind of trouble. Evelyn stayed at the house. She did not ride. She stood on the porch and watched them go, and when Samuel brought her coffee, she took it with both hands and did not drink it. Samuel. Yes, ma'am. How long? Could be a day, could be 3. Hale ran a lot of places. And if they're too late, they won't be, ma'am. Samuel, if they're too late. The old man put his hand over hers on the rail. Then your husband comes home and he tells you, and you do what you've been doing all week. You stand up, and you keep going. They were not too late. They were almost too late. The deputy sent a rider back at the end of the second day, and the rider came up the mountain at a dead gallop and reined his horse in front of the porch with his hat in his hand. Mrs. Maddox. Speak. They found him, ma'am. 2 men in a line shack on the upper Brazos. Boy was tied. Boy was thin. Boy was alive. She sat down on the porch step. She put her face in her hands. She didn't cry. She just breathed. "Where is my husband?" "Riding back, ma'am. With the boy. With his father. They'll be in by morning." "Tell Samuel to make up the green bedroom for the boy, with the south window. He's been in the dark a long time." "Yes, ma'am." Daniel Tomlin came up to the house at sunup, wrapped in Cole's coat, with his father walking beside the horse, with one hand on the boy's leg the whole way, like he was afraid to let go. Evelyn met them at the front door. She did not speak. She just opened her arms, and the boy, 16 years old, tall as his father, eyes hollow, walked into them and put his head on her shoulder and did not move for a long time. Wade Tomlin stood in the yard with his hat in his hands. Cole walked to him. "Wade, boss, federal deputy's going to take you in this afternoon. You're going to be charged with the arson." "Yes, sir." "You're going to plead guilty." "Yes, sir." "And you're going to testify against Hale." "Yes, sir." "And when you've done your time, Wade, when you've done your time, there'll be a job on this ranch for you to come back to." Wade Tomlin lifted his head. "Boss, not the foreman job. You don't get that back, but a job, honest, paid, with a roof, for you and your boy." "Boss, Don't say anything yet. Just take it." The old foreman put both hands over his face and stood there in the yard for a long time. The arson charge against Cole was dropped that week. The Land Commission hearing was canceled. Halford Petroleum issued a public statement washing its hands of any individual misconduct and pulled its drilling application out of 3 counties. The state senator from El Paso introduced a bill the following month to overhaul the entire Mineral Records Office. And when the newspapers came calling for a name to put on the bill, the senator said on the front porch of the Capitol, with 12 reporters writing it down, "This bill came out of the work of a young rancher's wife in Blackstone Ridge. Her name is Evelyn Maddox. She did in 9 days what this legislature couldn't do in 9 years." The newspapers printed it. 3 days after that, the first letter arrived at the ranch. It was from a farmer's wife in Coleman County. It said, "Mrs. Maddox, my husband and I are about to lose our water rights to a company that says they got them legal. Could you look at our papers?" The next day, 2 more letters came. By the end of the week, the postmaster in Red Hollow drove a wagon up the mountain himself with a sack of mail tied to the seat because the regular rider couldn't carry it all. Cole found Evelyn in the study that night, surrounded by envelopes. "Evelyn." "Cole. There's 200 letters here." "I know." "What are you going to do with them?" She looked up at him. "I'm going to read everyone." "Evelyn. And I'm going to answer everyone. And I'm going to find a lawyer in Austin who will work for me. And I'm going to start a fund out of this ranch, not a big fund, Cole. A small fund. An honest fund that pays for water rights review for any farmer in this state who can't afford one." "Evelyn. And I want to take 10% of next year's cattle sales and put it towards scholarships. For ranch kids, boys and girls, kids like my brother who almost had to quit school to feed a sick father. There's hundreds of them in this state, Cole. Hundreds." "Evelyn. And I want to raise the men's wages, every one of them, 20%. 20. Cole, look at me." He looked at her. "You and I sat in this study 3 weeks ago, and you told me your father knew this land would die if Halford got it. Cattle dying, creeks poisoning, families losing water. 3 other ranches you'd seen it happen on. Do you remember?" "I remember." "Then we don't just save Blackstone Ridge coal. We save the others. We use this place. The way your grandfather meant it to be used." He stood very still for a long moment. Then he walked around the desk, and he took her hand, and he put it over his heart. "Mrs. Maddox." "Yes, Mr. Maddox." "You are not the woman I thought I was marrying." "I know I'm not." "You are better than that woman." "Cole." "I mean it, Evelyn. I came down out of these mountains looking for a partner. I came home with a fire." They did all of it, not all at once, not in a day, not in a month, but they did all of it. The men's wages went up at the start of the next quarter, and 3 of them cried at the bunkhouse table when Cole read out the new rate. The Water Rights Fund opened in March in a little office above the dry goods store in Red Hollow, with a young lawyer out of Austin named Miss Eliza Penn, whom Evelyn had hired after 2 interviews and a very long letter. By June, the fund had restored water access to 14 farms. By December, 46. The first scholarship was awarded that fall. A boy named James Cobb from a homestead 3 miles outside Red Hollow who wanted to study medicine and didn't have shoes that fit. The check was $300, and his mother stood in the front yard of the ranch when Evelyn handed it to her, and the woman could not speak for crying. The cattle operations changed too, slowly, carefully. Cole brought in a man out of Wyoming who knew how to rotate pasture. He let the South Range rest for a year and brought it back stronger than it had been in 20. He capped the calving herd and stopped buying cheap stock to fill numbers. Tommy Carter came up to the ranch in the spring. He stood in front of the gate with his cap in his hand and a school satchel on his shoulder, and Evelyn ran out to meet him and hugged him so hard she lifted his feet off the ground. "Evie. Tommy. I made the honor roll." "Of course you did. Daddy said to tell you he's putting weight back on. He says the Dallas doctors got him on a new medicine." "Of course he is." "Evie." "What?" "The whole town's talking different about you now." "Are they?" "They are. You should hear them. Mrs. Hennessy at the dry goods store, she stopped me last week. She said, 'Tommy Carter, you tell your sister I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said when she rode out of town.'" She had tears in her eyes, Evie. Evelyn looked at her brother for a long moment. "Tommy?" "Yeah." "You tell Mrs. Hennessy it's all right. You tell her I forgive her. And then you tell her I'd be much obliged if she'd take a job running the new fund's mailing office." "Evie, I mean it. She's the best bookkeeper in 3 counties. I want her on my side." Tommy laughed. "You really did become somebody, didn't you?" "No, Tommy. I always was somebody. I just had to get out from under the dirt to find out." The trial of Victor Hale was held in federal court in Austin that summer. It lasted 19 days. Evelyn testified on the 11th day. She wore a dark blue dress and her mother's locket, and she walked into the courtroom with her chin up and her hands steady. And when the prosecutor asked her, "Mrs. Maddox, on the day Victor Hale came to your fence line, what exactly did he say to you?" she said, "He said, 'I'm not going to be sorry about you.'" The courtroom went silent. The jury heard her. The judge heard her. The reporters heard her. And in the back of the room, sitting next to a federal marshal, Wade Tomlin heard her too, with his 16-year-old son's hand in his, and the old foreman put his head down on the bench in front of him and wept. Victor Hale was convicted on 23 counts. The judge gave him 41 years. 3 state officials went down with him. 2 of them flipped on a 4th. The 4th flipped on Halford Petroleum's regional vice president. The vice president went to federal prison the following spring. The newspapers stopped calling Evelyn Maddox the desperate Carter girl who married rich. They started calling her something else. The first paper to print it was the Dallas Tribune, in a column written by the same journalist who had sat behind a curtain in her dining room a year earlier. She is what her county now calls her: the woman who saved the valley. Cole read the column out loud over breakfast on the day it ran. He set the paper down. "Evelyn?" "Yes." "Are you crying?" "A little." "Why?" "Because my mother used to say that nobody in Red Hollow would ever remember our name." He stood up. He walked around the table. He pulled her chair out, and he turned her toward him, and he knelt down in front of her so they were eye to eye. "Evelyn Maddox." "Yes, Cole. Your name is going to outlast both of us." "Cole, and I have to tell you something that I should have told you a long time ago." "What?" "When I rode down out of these mountains, I was looking for a wife. That part was true. But the reason I picked you out of the women I was watching, the reason I came down on that day in that town to that bank, I didn't tell you the whole reason." "What was the whole reason?" "I'd seen you, Evelyn, twice. Once at a stock show in Abilene 3 years before when you were standing in line for water for your father's horses, and once outside the dry goods store in Red Hollow last spring when you stopped to give a stray dog half your sandwich." "Cole." And I saw how you treated that dog when you didn't know anybody was watching. And I told Samuel that night, Samuel, if I ever come down out of these mountains for a wife, that's the woman I'm coming down for. She put both her hands on his face. Cole Maddox. Yes. You are an old fool. I am. Don't you ever stop being one. That winter she found out she was pregnant. She told Cole on a Tuesday morning over coffee with Samuel, pretending not to hear from the kitchen door. Cole set his cup down. He looked at her. He looked at her for so long that she got nervous. Cole, sorry. Are you all right? I'm Evelyn. I'm trying to remember how to breathe. Cole, my father. I know. My father didn't get to. I know Cole. Evelyn. What? Can I touch your hands? Of course you can touch my hands. He came around the table, and he took both her hands, and he pressed them to his forehead, and he stayed there bent over her hands for a long time without saying anything. When he finally lifted his head, his face was wet. Evelyn Maddox. Yes, Cole. I came down out of those mountains for a contract, and you have given me a life. You have given me a life. I know, Cole. I don't deserve it. You do, and you're going to spend the rest of yours earning it, just like I am. Samuel cried in the kitchen when they told him. The men cheered when Cole told them at the bunkhouse. Tommy Carter wrote a letter from school that read, Evie, you tell that baby, it's got an uncle who is going to teach it everything important, and Daddy has decided he is going to live another 20 years just to meet it. The whole valley seemed to lean in toward Blackstone Ridge that spring, the way fields lean toward a slow rain. And on the night before her daughter was born, when Evelyn could not sleep, and the wind was up against the windows, Cole found her standing at the long study window with her hand flat on the glass. Evelyn? Cole. You should be in bed. I will be. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking about the bank, Cole. What bank? Pritchard's bank, the day you walked in. What about it? I was 24 years old. I had 3 days. I was going to lose everything. And a stranger walked in and put a bag of cash on a desk and asked me to marry him. Yes. Cole. What? If you had walked in 5 minutes later, if Pritchard had gotten me to sign, if the writer with your father's contracts had come a day earlier, none of this happens. None of it. Not the ranch, not the trial, not the fund, not the senator, not the men's wages, not Tommy's school, not my daddy living, not the baby. None of it. She turned around. Cole. Yes. I used to think the brave thing was choosing love. And now I think the brave thing was choosing to believe my life could be bigger than what I was born into, even when I couldn't see how, even when I had 3 days, even when I didn't know your name. He crossed the room. He put his hand over hers on the glass. Evelyn. What? Come to bed, my love. There's a daughter coming in the morning, and she's going to need a mother who slept. She did not sleep. She lay on her side with one hand on her belly and the other tucked under Cole's, and she watched the dark inch across the ceiling, and somewhere in the last hour before dawn, the first pain came. Cole. What? It's time. He was out of the bed before she finished the sentence. Their daughter came into the world at 9:30 on a Tuesday morning with a full head of dark hair and a cry that could shake the rafters. And Cole Maddox, the man, the whole town of Red Hollow had once whispered, was half outlaw, sat on the edge of his wife's bed afterward, and held that tiny baby in 2 hands, the size of dinner plates, and could not speak for 40 minutes. Cole? I can't, Evelyn. I can't yet. Take your time. What's her name? You said it last night. You said May, after your mother. You're sure? I'm sure. May Maddox. May Maddox. He bent his head over the baby's face, and a single tear fell onto her blanket, and the baby reached up one impossibly small hand and closed it around his thumb. Evelyn. Yes, Cole. My father is here in this room. I know he is. My mother is here in this room. I know. They're standing right there, right by the door. Cole, tell them hello. He looked up at the empty doorway. His voice cracked. Mama, Daddy, look what your boy did. 6 years passed. They passed the way good years pass, fast and full and quietly, with the small things stacking up into a life, almost without anybody noticing. May learned to walk in the upstairs hall, and learned to ride at 3, and learned to read at 4, sitting on Samuel's lap in the kitchen, with the old man pointing at words in a worn-out catechism book. Tommy Carter graduated from school and went to college in Houston and wrote home every Sunday, and the year May turned 5, he wrote to say he had been accepted to medical school in Philadelphia. And Evelyn read the letter out loud at the dinner table, and her father, old Mr. Carter, alive 5 years past. Every doctor's prediction set down his fork and said very quietly, Evie, your boy. Look what your boy is going to be. The Water Rights Fund grew. By the 3rd year, it was helping farmers in 4 counties. By the 5th year, 6. Miss Eliza Penn took on 3 associates, and the office above the dry goods store had to expand twice. The scholarship grew. The first scholarship boy, James Cobb, finished his degree and came home to Red Hollow and opened a doctor's office on Main Street. The men's wages held. 2 of them bought their own little places. One of them sent his daughter to a school for nurses up in Kansas City. And Wade Tomlin came home from the federal prison camp in the spring of the 4th year, with his hat in his hand and his back bent, and his boy Daniel standing beside him holding his pay envelope from his summer work at the railhead, and Cole Maddox was waiting for him at the gate. Wade? Boss? Welcome home. Boss, Don't, Wade. We said what we needed to say 5 years ago. Pick up your boots in the bunkhouse. You start Monday. Boss? Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank her. He pointed at the porch. Evelyn was standing there with May on her hip. Wade Tomlin took off his hat and walked the length of that long yard with his eyes on the boards, and when he reached the porch, he could not lift his head. Mrs. Maddox. Mr. Tomlin. Ma'am, I don't have the words. Then don't use any Wade. Go pick up your boots. It was in the 7th year that the old trouble came back. Not Hale. Hale was still buried in a federal prison and would die there 4 years later. Not Halford either. Halford had been broken into 3 smaller companies, and none of them had the stomach for Texas anymore. This was a new thing, a bigger thing. A railroad company out of Chicago. They came in the form of a letter on heavy cream paper addressed to Mrs. Evelyn Maddox, hand-delivered to the front door on a Thursday afternoon by a young man in a black suit and city shoes. Mrs. Maddox. Yes. My name is Mr. Lucas Pierce. I represent the Continental and Northern Railway. May I speak with you and your husband for 15 minutes? About what? About the route of a new line. She let him in. She let him sit at the parlor table where Victor Hale had once sat 7 years before. She poured him coffee, and she listened while he explained in a soft city voice that the Continental and Northern was planning to build a freight line straight through the upper 12,000 acres of Blackstone Ridge. You want to put a railroad through our north pasture. We want to purchase an easement, Mrs. Maddox, generously, above market. And if we say no, Mrs. Maddox, our charter is federally backed. Eminent domain is, well, it's a tool we'd rather not use, but it is available. She set her cup down. Mr. Pierce? Yes. I'd like you to leave my house. Mrs. Maddox. Now. He stood up. He picked up his hat. At the door he turned. Mrs. Maddox, I should mention, I have authorization to offer up to $400,000. 400. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Pierce, I once knew a man who offered my husband $46 million for this ranch. He's dying in a cell in Leavenworth. Get off my porch. That night, Cole was quieter than she had seen him in years. Evelyn, I know what you're going to say. They have eminent domain. I know. They can take what they want and pay us what they want. I know Cole, and they will. Maybe. Evelyn. Cole, we've done this before. It's bigger this time. Then we're bigger this time too. She wrote letters that night until 2 in the morning. She wrote to the senator from El Paso, now a federal judge retired, but still feared. She wrote to the journalist in Dallas now, an editor of his own paper. She wrote to the woman in Coleman County, whose water rights she had saved 7 years before, whose son was now sitting in the state legislature. She wrote to 46 other ranching families in 3 counties, whose lives had been touched in some small way by the fund or the fight or the name Maddox. And then she did one more thing. She wrote to a young woman she had never met. A young woman named Clara Whitfield, who had come up to the ranch the previous summer as part of a group of girls Evelyn had invited to learn what she had taken to calling in private, and only with Cole, the lessons I wished I'd had at 20. Clara Whitfield was 23 years old. She had a head for numbers like a steel trap. She was now reading law in Austin under Miss Eliza Penn. The letter to Clara was 3 lines long. Clara, there is a railroad coming through Blackstone Ridge. I need a young lawyer who is hungry and afraid of nothing. I think that is you. Come if you can. Evelyn. Clara Whitfield arrived 4 days later in a black wool coat with a satchel of law books, and when Evelyn met her at the gate, Clara took off her hat and said, Mrs. Maddox, I read every paper Miss Penn has on the Hale case. I'd like to know what you'd like me to do. Clara, I'd like you to keep a railroad off my land. Yes, ma'am. The fight took 18 months. It was a quieter fight than the last one. There was no parlor scene, no man in handcuffs. There were depositions in Austin, and arguments before federal judges, and 3 hearings at the Department of the Interior, and at the end of all of it, the Continental and Northern Railway agreed to route their freight line through a corridor 22 miles north of Blackstone Ridge on land that had already been ceded for industrial use, and they paid for it themselves. Clara Whitfield argued the final case. She was 25 years old. She won. When she came back to the ranch, she walked into the front parlor and set her satchel on the floor and stood very still for a moment. Mrs. Maddox. Yes, Clara. I think I just won my first big case. I think you did, dear. I didn't know I could do that. Evelyn stood up. She crossed the room. She put both her hands on the young woman's shoulders. Clara Whitfield. Yes, ma'am. Now you do. The girl burst into tears. It was in the 10th year that Samuel died. He went the way good men go quietly on a Sunday morning in his own bed, with the morning sun coming through the south window of the room he had slept in for 49 years. Cole found him. He did not call out. He did not run for help. He sat down on the edge of the old man's bed, and he took Samuel's hand, and he held it for a long time. When Evelyn found him there an hour later, Cole was still holding the hand. Cole. He's gone, Evelyn. I know. He raised me, Evelyn. I know, Cole. After my father, after everything, Samuel was the one who... I know. He bent over and pressed his forehead to the old man's knuckles. Samuel. Yes, my love. Samuel was the only person on this earth before you who I would have died for. She knelt down beside the bed and put her arm around her husband's shoulders, and the 3 of them stayed there in that quiet room for a long time, 2 of them breathing, and 1 of them at peace. They buried him on the ridge above the house next to Edward and May Maddox. May Evelyn's May, 8 years old now, in a black dress her grandmother Carter had sewn for her, stood at the grave and held her father's hand. Daddy? What baby? Was Samuel old? He was baby. Was he tired? He was sweetheart. Then it's all right that he went to sleep. Cole looked down at his daughter. Yes, May, it's all right. Daddy? Yes. When you're old, you can sleep too. But not yet. Not yet, baby. Promise. I promise. 2 more years passed. May turned 10. She had her father's gray eyes and her mother's hands and the temper of a Texas summer storm, and she rode like she had been born on horseback. Tommy Carter graduated from medical school in Philadelphia and came home to Texas and opened a hospital in Red Hollow with a wing for the working poor that Evelyn paid for in full and refused to put her name on. Evelyn's father lived to see the hospital open. He cut the ribbon with a pair of shears that shook in his hand. 3 weeks later, he went to sleep beside the photograph of his wife and did not wake up. Wade Tomlin was the head of the South Range by then. His son Daniel had finished a degree in agriculture at A&M and was running the breeding program. The barn that had burned down had been rebuilt twice as big, and the men called it the Tomlin barn on purpose every day, until Wade stopped flinching when he heard the word. Clara Whitfield opened her own law office in Austin. She named it Penn Whitfield and Carter Penn for her teacher. Whitfield for herself and Carter for the woman who had written her a 3-line letter 8 years before. She told Evelyn over dinner one night that she had 3 young women working under her, now all of them girls, who had come up to Blackstone Ridge for one of Evelyn's summer programs. 3 of them Clara. 3 of them Mrs. Maddox. What are their names? Sarah Briggs, Emily Cobb, and a girl out of Lubbock named Ruth. Sarah Briggs, Pastor Briggs' granddaughter. Yes, ma'am. The same Pastor Briggs who shook his head at me when I rode out of Red Hollow with my husband. The very same, ma'am. Evelyn laughed. She laughed for a long time. A documentary film crew came up the mountain in the 14th year. A serious-looking man with a notebook, a young woman with a tape recorder, and a quiet boy carrying a camera. They had come from a college up north. They wanted to film a project on what they called the rural reform movement of the American Southwest. They wanted to interview Evelyn. Evelyn was 41 years old. She wore a blue dress and her mother's locket, and she sat at her own kitchen table, not the parlor, not the study, the kitchen, and answered their questions for 3 hours. Mrs. Maddox, can I ask you the question I came up here to ask? Go ahead. There's a story they tell about you in Red Hollow. They say you walked into a bank 24 years old with 3 days to save your family. They say a stranger walked in behind you. They say you married him before sundown. That's all true. They say the marriage was arranged, a trade, no love. That's also true. And now you sit on the boards of 2 hospitals and a state water commission. A senator was elected last year on a platform you helped write. There are 9 programs in 3 states modeled on the Blackstone Fund. There are women practicing law all over Texas because of summers they spent on this ranch. All right. Mrs. Maddox, my question is, was it worth it? She did not answer immediately. She looked out the kitchen window for a long moment. Then she looked back at the man. Sir, worth it for who? Worth it for you. For me. Yes, ma'am. She thought about that a long time. Sir, the day I walked into that bank, I thought my life was already over. I was 24 years old, and I could see plain as day the rest of the years coming. Bury my daddy. Watch my brother go down a coal mine. Marry a man I didn't love because there'd be no other choice. Spend the rest of my life small. Sir, do you understand what I'm telling you? I think I do, ma'am. There are millions of girls in this country whose lives I can almost see from here. Girls in towns like Red Hollow. Girls who are 24 with 3 days. Girls who have been told their whole lives that the biggest thing they will ever do is survive. Sir, the whole point of this place, the fund, the law office, the scholarships, the summers, the whole point is to find those girls and tell them what nobody told me. And what is that, ma'am? That the biggest thing they will ever do is not survive. The biggest thing they will ever do is choose to believe they are bigger than the suffering they were born into, and then prove it. The young woman with the tape recorder was crying. The man with the notebook had stopped writing. The quiet boy with the camera filmed Evelyn Maddox saying that exactly that, and that piece of film would be played in classrooms in 3 states for the next 30 years. That night, Cole found her on the back porch with a cup of coffee in her hand and the dark coming on. Evelyn? Cole? That young man with the notebook asked me a question on the way out. What did he ask? He asked me if you were always like this. What did you tell him? I told him no. No. I told him you used to be quieter. She laughed. Cole. What? Sit with me. He sat. They watched the dark come down over the upper meadow. Cole. Yes, my love. Can I ask you something? Anything. That day in the bank. Yes. If I had said no. Evelyn. If I had said no, Cole, what would you have done? I would have walked back out into the street and gotten on my horse and ridden home, and I would have lost this ranch by Friday. And then I'd have buried my father's name and walked off this mountain a poor man and started over somewhere where nobody knew me. Probably Wyoming. 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 Cole Maddox in Wyoming. Wouldn't have lasted. No, you wouldn't have. He turned his head toward her. Evelyn? What? Now my turn. All right. If you could go back, to that day, to that bank, knowing what you didn't know, knowing it was a contract, knowing you didn't love me, knowing the rest of your life was about to start over inside of 15 minutes. Yes. Would you still marry me? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she set her coffee cup down on the rail of the porch, and she turned and faced him fully, and she took his rough farmer's hand in both of hers. Cole. Yes. I married you to escape poverty. I know. I didn't love you. I didn't even know you. I signed those papers in 11 minutes and walked out of that courthouse a stranger to my own life. I know, my love. But what you really gave me, Cole, what you really gave me was not a marriage, and not a ranch, and not even safety. What did I give you? You gave me the chance to find out who I could become. He closed his eyes. Cole, I didn't know there was a woman in me who could face down a man like Victor Hale. I didn't know there was a woman in me who could read a contract and find a fraud. I didn't know there was a woman in me who could write a 3-line letter that would set a girl named Clara Whitfield on a road to a law office in Austin. I didn't know any of those women were inside me, Cole. Nobody had ever told me they were. Evelyn, you did. You looked at me across Pritchard's desk and you saw them all, every one of them. And then you waited. You waited, Cole. You waited while I figured out they were there too. My love. So yes, Cole, yes. Knowing every single thing, every contract, every betrayal, every fire, every grave, every long night. Yes. I would walk back into that bank. I would put down my pen. I would look at you across that desk, and I would say yes. She squeezed his hand, and I would not need 3 days to do it. I would do it before you finished asking. He could not speak. He just nodded with his eyes closed, with his weathered face wet with his hand crushed inside both of hers. May came out onto the porch a few minutes later in her nightgown, 12 years old now, almost as tall as her mother. Mama. May. What are you and Daddy doing out here in the dark? Evelyn pulled her daughter down between them on the bench. We're remembering baby. Remembering what? Remembering how we got here. How did you get here, Mama? Cole turned his head and looked at his wife over the dark head of their daughter, and the two of them held each other's eyes for a long, full second. Then Evelyn put her arm around her girl and pulled her close. May. Yes, Mama. A long time ago, your daddy walked into a bank, and your mama walked out of one, and we built every single thing you can see from this porch, every fence, every barn, every man working a pasture, every girl reading a law book in Austin, every farmer drinking water out of a creek. The company didn't get to take out of one decision. What decision, Mama? Evelyn tipped her face up to the dark sky over Blackstone Ridge. The sky she had thought at 24 would never belong to her, and her voice came out clear and steady and absolutely sure. The decision to believe my life could be bigger than the suffering I was born into. May, listen to me. Listen carefully. Whatever life puts in front of you, whatever room you walk into, whatever paper they put in your lap, you decide. You decide what you are. Nobody else gets to. Not the bank, not the town, not the men with the silver hair and the soft hands, not even the people who love you. You decide. The little girl looked up at her mother. Yes, Mama. Promise me, May. I promise, Mama. Say it. I will decide. Again. I will decide. Evelyn pulled her daughter tight to her side and held out her other hand for her husband. And Cole took it, and the three of them sat there on the porch of Blackstone Ridge, while the lights came on, one by one, in every bunkhouse, and every barn, and every cabin, across 42,000 acres of land that the world had once been certain a girl from Red Hollow would lose. She had not lost it. She had built it. She had earned it. She had become it. And somewhere in the dark on the long road behind her, the desperate 24-year-old girl who had walked into a bank with 3 days to live finally laid down her burden, looked at the woman she had grown up to be, and was at peace. She had said yes to a stranger to save her family. She had stayed to save a man. She had risen to save a valley. And she had become in the end exactly what every frightened girl in every small town in this country deserves to become, the author of her own life, and the proof that a woman's beginning does not get to write her ending.